Alright guys, Jameson and Alex here. Today we're going to be talking about the Titan Slayer Rogue Subclass from Valda's Spire of Secrets. So, if you're new to the channel or the subclass series, what we're going to do is go through all the abilities gained in the subclass, then we're going to rate it based on its roleplay value, combat value, and overall class synergy, based on how the abilities gained in the subclass improve on the base class abilities.
Bingo.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to be entered in our D&D Beyond Players Bundle giveaway. And all that being said, let's just jump straight into it.
Okay. Man, this guy's interesting.
Love it.
Love
Spoilers.
it. Spoiler alert, we love it. Okay. Underfoot combat, starting at level 3. While you are adjacent to a creature that is 2 or more size categories larger than you can use your bonus action to enter that creature's space. You remain in this creature's space until it moves, or until you use your bonus action to move to an unoccupied space adjacent to that same creature. While you are in a hostile creature space, you can use sneak attack against that creature if you don't have disadvantage on the attack roll, even if you don't have advantage on the attack roll, and if no enemy is within 5 feet of the target. So basically, as long as you don't have disadvantage for some other reason, you get sneak attack all the time on this specific target. Additionally, while in this space, you have half cover if the creature is 2 size categories larger than you, and 3/4 cover if the creature is 3 or more size categories larger than you. So specifically, and moving forward, keep in mind, we're assuming you're going to be playing a small character, a small race,
you pretty much have to.
I think which we both love, because in a general rule, as far as effectiveness goes, it's kind of to your disadvantage to be a small character, because you have disadvantage on like grapples against creatures that are much bigger than you. Things like there's not really an advantage to playing a smaller character typically in general rules most of the time,
other than like racial features potentially.
Correct, but it's a general rule. Usually it's your disadvantage, but this says screw that. We're take your disadvantage and make it like your best thing.
Absolutely. Also at level 3, we have Knee Striker. When you make a sneak attack against a creature that is of a size larger than yours, you can forego half your sneak attack dice, rounded down, to knock that creature prone.
Did you hear the word save on that?
Nope.
Did you hear like number of uses per day or per rest on that?
Absolutely.
Oh, how about that?
Yeah. So I cannot stress, and we went over this so much, how much I love the concept of using sneak attack dice as a resource.
Yeah,
so cool.
If as much as Jameson hates how the Warlock's subclass spells aren't included for free, Jameson really, 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 really likes the concept of playing with different resources.
Stuff that you see in 5th edition that never gets touched, like the Soul Leader Warlock with Exhaustion.
Yes.
Or, there's been some stuff that uses hit die, or other random stuff that you see on your character sheet all the time, or it's just a looming threat that you never experience, and just builds it as a resource.
And for this specific thing, well, not alone, but this plus the way this plays around the size thing.
Absolutely.
If we had a 4th category of like interesting, intriguing, like, oh, that's really neat, 4.5 out of 5 stars, or flumps in this case, for like just how it intentionally leans into playing with a small guy, play a little person, get in there and mess somebody up, and using one of your normal just damage dealing abilities, the main damage dealing ability you're doing as a rogue, and using it as a resource to trigger a different ability, or at least the option to trigger an extra ability.
Yes.
Strong love.
Some spoilers for the rating portion. We're already giving some previews. There'll be lots to go over.
Yeah.
Thanks again to our sponsors, Hit Point Press and their Fable Makers deck. Omens and fortunes that you can incorporate into your campaigns. It's got books to describe ways to add these things into your campaigns, to add intrigue, plot hooks, all kinds of different ways to utilize these features.
Hey, check out this really weird or intriguing, interesting thing that kind of steer people back towards your main plotline that you're needing to advance a story you're trying to get to.
Absolutely. So guys, make sure you check out the link in the description down below. Then at level 9, we have Confound the Big Folk.
Love that.
You are an expert in the art of baffling big folk who are slow and unobservant by your standards. You have advantage on dexterity stealth checks made to hide from and sneak around creatures that are a larger size than you. Additionally, if you make a check to avoid, climb on, or confuse a creature that is at least 1 size larger than you, and the check doesn't already use your proficiency bonus, you can add half of your proficiency bonus to that check.
Sure.
We're going to go into that in the roleplay section here.
Yep.
In a minute.
Next up at 13, we have Fear No Monster. You cannot be frightened. End of story. Additionally, whenever you roll initiative, you have advantage on ability checks and saving throws you make until the end of your next turn.
All right.
Okay. Interesting. Unique ability. Not too bad. And then finally at 17, we have Fell the Giant. Your weapon attacks against creatures that are at least one size larger than you score a critical hit on a roll of 19 or 20, so increased crit chance. Your critical hits also knock the target prone. No save, no need to spend that extra sneak attack die.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So like that, yeah. So double the chance to get them sneak attacks, and then they're on their butts, and then if they don't get back up for somebody else, you could wail on people.
Oh, yeah. So
I just imagine they're like in there with daggers and short swords, like your Achilles tendons are mine, and your hamstrings. It just.
The skin is the same thickness on the inside as the outside. Anyways, those are all the abilities gained in the subclass, so we're going to move on into the rating portion of the video.
Yes.
First up is the roleplay value, asterisk, as always. Talking about roleplay value, we're talking about interacting with the world around you, interacting with NPCs, non-combat scenarios, avoiding combat, basically things outside of the initiative order.
Yep.
Not talking about your class fantasy, history, lore, background, that's on you as a player.
Yep.
We can't rate you, but we can rate the abilities gained in the subclass and how they might improve your potential in those role play scenarios.
That's right.
So, all that being said, there are some interesting things here.
Yes.
First of all, as we said, you really do have to play a small race.
To maximize this and really play it how it's designed,
Yep. Yes.
it would be even so much more fun if you were allowed to play a tiny race.
And that get real crazy, real fast. That being said,
Sorry, I'm difficult. I'm sorry.
the Confound Big Folk ability is actually incredibly potent because
Yes.
it is so broad
Yes.
to confuse, avoid, or climb on. Like, avoid and confuse are so broad, and if you're creative, you can hit pretty much any ability check, I would say,
Yes.
to get that. So you're almost like, as long as you're trying to interact with a creature or avoid interacting with a creature of some sort, which a lot of times is going to come up,
Yep.
you almost have Jack of all trades,
Basically.
which is pretty crazy just to get that.
Yeah, because you're a rogue and you have expertise on certain things already anyway, so now
Right.
you're getting to be a slightly nerfed version of Base Bard.
Yeah, because you do have to be able to, it has to deal with interacting with a creature. So if there's no
Yes.
creatures involved, if it's just purely exploration,
Yeah.
you're not going to be able to get that bonus.
And if you're in a lot of urban areas that may have just mostly humanoid, that's also going to be...
And typically.
And there are humanoid races that are large, but on average, most of them aren't. So there's going to be some limitations there, but if you're able to find anything large or larger than that, obviously, you can have a lot of fun.
And then another thing on here that is nice as well is the not being able to be frightened. Definitely can come into play, especially in roleplay, but it is more on the niche side of things.
Yeah.
So with that, and comboed with the Fear No Monster, that can come into play as well, getting advantage on ability checks on basically the first turn of combat, essentially.
Yeah.
Depending on how creative you are and how much your DM would allow, if you're trying to avoid creatures or avoid combat, you could potentially diffuse a situation
Yes.
with your Confound Big Folk, assuming they are a larger size category than you, and you're trying to avoid or confuse the creature to get out of a combat scenario. So it's potential to just bypass a combat as well.
Yeah,
and
you
you're
can,
getting advantage
if you go
and,
early on in the
proficiency.
combat on a roll's initiative, you have a way to talk
you're-
yourself out of.
You're
or,
a rogue. You have high initiative most of the time.
Yeah, so you can work a way to maybe, like I said, Jason, diffuse a situation where maybe just like your turn of combat happens and everybody kind of calms down.
Right.
It still kind of
It
falls
is
in that RP
interesting,
area
because you're going to get not only, and if it's a proficiency you don't already have,
Jack
you're going
of
to
all
gain
trades.
half,
Yeah.
and you get advantage. So it's going to be pretty interesting, actually, and pretty useful. I think that's something a lot of people probably would overlook looking through it the first time.
Yep.
That being said, we gave it a 3 out of 5 in the roleplay, just because you're really only getting that half proficiency, and it is limited by creatures and of course the size category as well. So if you are small, it is easier because you have to be small because you can interact with medium-sized creatures that way.
Yep.
But if you're medium, it's going to shut down a lot of the features, and we'll get into that here in the combat section.
Yes. Speaking of combat side of things, to say this thing excels in combat is an understatement, for sure, which rogues are good at anyway because they have this thing called sneak attack. But anyway, so because of, the thing called sneak attack rogues have, this any way that allows you to get it more consistently is good for rogue.
Always good.
Good for rogue. So the fact that this says you can just get yourself into another creature's space, and as long as you don't have disadvantage on the attack.
Yep.
You don't have to have advantage. You don't have to have another enemy there to, distract them so you can kind of like poke at them when they're not looking or whatever. Just all the time and you're in their space. And on top of that, you still get the partial cover or even 3/4 cover.
Yep.
If, you're in the space. It's offensive and defensive. It just costs you your bonus action to get in their space. Now, rogues, a lot of times you get the whole, offhand attack with your bonus action as an extra chance to trigger your sneak attack if you do hit. So there is a little bit of a hindrance there to start. But if the creature doesn't move once you're in its space, right, you've got that extra, every turn.
Yes.
Again, the drags, raking, the daggers do it.
Yes.
Then we get, without leaving 3. And this is something else that I didn't mention in our conversation before that really just hit my attention. You get the ways to trigger the sneak attack all the time.
Yep.
Almost all the time.
Right. Because if you're small, you only need a large creature,
right,
which is going to come up pretty regularly.
Yes.
Pretty much outside humanoids.
And the later this is one of those rare subclasses that actually scales better the later you go because of that. Because the further you get into a campaign, higher levels, the better chances you have of fighting a lot more farting. Wait a minute. A lot more large creatures, hence, the big collection of them that are in front of us. There's a lot more of them at higher CRs. But also, we have this thing called Knee Striker at level 3 that says you can choose to forego half your sneak attack die and just knock that creature on its can.
Yeah, that's solid.
So therefore, all of this is level 3.
Yeah.
Just with those 3, this makes this an uber potent multi-class option.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because
even if you don't care about sneak attack.
You don't care about the actual sneak attack damage, it's the fact that you automatically have a chance to knock something prone.
Oh, yeah.
Makes it where it can work with the things. Now, granted, yes, if you're a paladin, you've done your sneak attack, maybe you haven't only have your extra attack with, paladin with rogue. But the point is, just getting that plays so much well with anything. Like, it's never a bad thing. If you were wanting to dip rogue and pair it with something else, the fact that you get all that by level 3 makes it for a fantastic multi-class dip. Moving on. I beat it around a little bit there, but we're going to get there. Confound the Big Folk is primarily going to be an RP-based thing, but again, you advantage to hide if you're trying to hide as a bonus action as a rogue, so you can get around something, and again, more ways to trigger your sneak attack. Yep. Definitely going to be useful in combat. And then you can't be frightened, so if a creature does have frightening presence, again, I reference what's currently in front of us, you can just ignore that, and when you're rolling initiative, advantage on saving throws. So if does something throws an ability,
round 1, just
a spell or something on the first turn, you're just gonna have advantage against that.
Yep.
So cool. Only throw 1 turn, but it does help you, get through that early round burst. Something like one of these wants to fly in and just rake you with a dragon breath on its opening turn, which would be a good decision on its part if you're all clustered together specifically. So it helps you avoid some early burst damage or spell effect, of course. And then the capstone at 17, doubling your crit chance, and where your crits just automatically knock stuff prone.
Yeah.
Okay. There's nothing really limiting this thing here except for the fact of you've got to have bigger creatures to fight. So if you're fighting a lot of medium creatures, which you will be more likely to do early than you will late, you are hindered a little bit by that. But once you get to fighting large creatures regularly or bigger, sweet mercy, this thing does a lot of stupid things.
Yep.
Hence why it's a 4.5 out of 5. Because if this all said 1 size larger instead of 2 sizes larger on some of the abilities, it would be a 5.
Yeah. It's
end of story. That little limitation is if you're fighting a lot of medium-sized stuff, you don't get to pop off quite as hard, does give it just a little bit of a handicap.
Yes.
But I emphasize a very little one.
I have comments as well, but I'll just include them into the synergy rating
look
portion
at
as
you.
well. So I think one of the things that's going to be severely underutilized on here, or overlooked, I should say, is the underfoot combatant. It is, like we said, 2 size categories is a thing. So being small to large, it does scale very well, as we've mentioned already. As you get higher up in the campaign and the CR, it's going to become more and more effective. You can also be the specialist where if you get into a combat where there's multiple medium creatures and one large one, you go straight to the large one every time because you're going to have a better chance fighting it. So there is that as well to keep in mind. But the thing is, the potency of that ability, even though it is limited, it's not really limited that much. And to be able to just get sneak attack so easily is something very few rogue subclasses get. I mean, really, it's just like Swashbuckler and Phantom Rogue, I believe, are the only ones that have alternative ways.
At least that are official stuff.
that we've reviewed, I should say. Yeah. To get sneak attack in easier ways, more consistently. So, plus, this gives you a defensive option on top of that as well, which is
the others don't do.
And then even using the sneak attack die as a resource is huge because you're going to be able to, there's no cap on it. You can do it every single turn potentially as long as you're hitting and triggering the effects to give you sneak attack.
That's right.
So spending half of that damage to knock something prone is huge because even if it does just stand right back up, it's using half their movement. So you could just trade some damage to limit the mobility of the creature. And again, if you are underfoot combatant on here, it may not try to get up or do anything because you're kind of like in between its legs or whatever, just causing a ruckus and some nethers.
This much.
that could be crazy as well. Confound the Big Folk. I mean, yes, it's going to give you some even more potent stealth as if rogues needed that. They don't. Let's be honest.
They don't.
So that is interesting on there. Not being able to be frightened definitely can come into play with survivability and being able to focus and stay on targets. Because frightened can really be a huge hindrance if it does trigger and you're trying to get something, you can't get to it because you're frightened. So that does come into play and helps you stay in the fight because bigger things typically do have frightened abilities.
Yep.
So that does matter more than you might initially think. No. And then the first turn stuff is what it is. It's not crazy, but it does help you a little bit with survivability and some potential to diffuse as well. There's a lot of internal synergy already between all these abilities.
Yep.
But where it really gets crazy for me is the last ability.
Yeah.
Because rogues can reliably get sneak attack. Normally they can reliably get sneak attack, let alone with these other abilities and options to get it alternatively. But to get an extra, you're basically doubling your crit chance, right? You're getting an extra 5% crit chance.
10% crit chance. Yep.
And you have sneak attack. So critical hit sneak attacks are huge damage. So to double
the
chance to get those is just huge. And sneak attack is a massive part of your class. Yes. And then knocking stuff auto prone, another way to knock stuff prone, you crit them, or you spend your sneak attack die. I mean, that's just, prone is good, guys.
It is.
If you have martial characters that are in melee, or people that can get up there and hit on something when it's prone.
Or the other thing to keep in mind is you're a rogue. You can knock something in your butt, disengage out of there, and then something's on its butt to fail a dexterity saving throw of your wizard's fireball.
Right.
So it's not just the obvious answer obviously is marshals and melee whacking on something that's flat.
It's the ranged attackers.
It's really just rangers and then cantrips that are bad for dealing with
this.
At least
AoE effects
on attack. On attack cantrips. If it's a dexterity saving throw cantrip.
So all that being said, it really emphasizes a lot on the strengths of rogue.
Yes.
And makes sneak attack even more of a monster than it already is. And gives you some extra
It brings up both the floor and the chances to you get sneak attack more often, and it also raises the ceiling with the increased crit chance and automatic chances, choosing and then automatic chances to knocking things prone.
Yeah, so it really just takes the best parts of rogue and makes them even better. So 5 out of 5.
Lysenko.
Synergy. One of those rare ones where it does something so potent and so strong in multiple places that it's just, even if, the Confound Big Folk isn't necessarily the biggest thing in the world, it doesn't matter because the other stuff is so potent. It's just crazy.
Pretty much.
So yeah, this is one of the strongest ones we've gone over in Valda so far. I think it's the second.
I believe it's the second highest scoring subclass we have done.
Sorcerer, I think.
Yeah.
Spoilers, if you haven't seen that, you should check it out. It's really crazy.
Because again,
sorcery.
if we think it's half a frumph better than this one, we're checking it out, ain't it?
Yes. So that's going to be it for today, guys. Let us know your thoughts down below. What do you think of the size category being utilized and sneak attack die for resource? Like, very interesting. Let us know down below.
He can't contain himself, I'm telling you.
So good. If you enjoyed the video, remember to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification, see when our new videos are coming out. Thanks to our sponsors, as always, guys.
As always.
Thanks for watching.